GLP-1s drugs are genuinely having their moment right now. Everyone knows someone on Ozempic or Wegovy. So 1 in 8 Americans, adults, have used a GLP-1, and honestly, the results look incredible. But from a wellness standpoint, what's actually happening inside the body, that the number on the scale isn't really telling us because the more we really dug into this and the more we kept finding that stuff, it wasn't really making it to the mainstream conversation. And that's really what we're going to dig in today.
Welcome to the Road to Wellbeing podcast, where we speak about how different HR and wellness leaders can tackle some of the biggest problems in wellness today. So I'm Zikea,
And I'm Samantha Levin.
and we'll be diving into GLP-1s. So as Sammy mentioned, yes, GLP-1s are having their moment right now. You could say about 1 in 8 American adults have now used one. So it's not just something that's a niche or for something specific anymore.
And that's really concerning, especially for people who are starting these journeys. It's become so easy to access these medications without really understanding what you're getting into. You can't just, you could just scroll through social media, watch TV, and you see these ads. I know when I take the path, I see it all the time in the path, the ads for all of these third-party companies, really making it sound like super simple as just filling out a form on their website. No real conversation with a provider, no lifestyle support, no guardrails in place. It's really become a problem. So, Zikea, maybe tell me a little bit about what you wish people were really asked before starting their journeys.
Yeah, of course. So something that I wish people ask more throughout their journeys would be kind of what are those actual effects on the body? When we think of GLP-1, we're just thinking about weight loss. But as we know, the body isn't a silo, so one thing doesn't happen based off of one drug. So I do wish people asked a little bit more about, hey, what else could be happening?
Yeah, absolutely. The process should have these clinical guardrails and lifestyle support really built into it from the beginning. But what's
Mhm.
happening out there that's the complete opposite? It's just the filling out a form, here's your prescription. Nobody's asking those deeper questions. So maybe let's talk about it a little bit. Zykeal, what are some of these GLP-1 side effects that people aren't talking about?
Yeah, of course. So, one thing is the muscle loss conversation. So, this was something that did really surprise me. So, a lot of the weight loss that's coming from GLP-1s can come from lean muscle and not fat. Now, this can be an issue because muscle is what drives your resting metabolism. So, if you have less muscle, you'll have a slower metabolism. Also, your muscles, of course, protect your joints, support your balance. It kind of determines how you age. Now, the thing with this is it kind of sounds a little counteractive if we're losing muscles and we have that slower metabolism, but we're taking a medication to lose weight. You're kind of counterbalancing that. Now, there are some researchers who kind of are like, this isn't totally happening. So it is an active scientific debate that's going on, but there is something that's been documented around skeletal muscle loss being real.
Yeah.
Now, oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, wow, that's a lot.
And then there's also the nutritional side. So when users begin taking GLP-1s, their caloric intake can drop drastically. Now, when that drops, that means specific nutrients can drop as well. So things like iron, vitamin D, B12, and a few of those minerals like calcium, magnesium, and zinc. Now, this can become a problem because some of those symptoms, fatigue, brain fog, low moods, it's like it's what people are already expecting from a med. So a lot of people don't even realize they have this deficiency going. And then very similar to what you mentioned about like the process, there is no conversation with their physicians about it. When when people are going through these third-party services and getting these GLP-1s, as you said, it's just an assessment, a quick blood test, then whatever clinical provider then gives them, hey, this is what your specific plan is. And because people aren't able to speak directly to these physicians and their actual attending physicians may not be up to date on this, they're kind of missing this part to get that touched on and to really understand, hey, these deficiencies are happening. Here's what you can do to now kind of maintain that.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. That is a lot. And I think that's super important. And, I feel like none of this is really being communicated to people when they start their journeys. It's just they're handed these medications. They go to the pharmacies and pick it up. And, it's just like, okay, thank you. Let me go home and take this. And they're not meeting with their physical doctors. It's more of like that telehealth sessions. So now, from that like wellness standpoint and like we're thinking about it and us in this field, it's like really what is happening to the body, like you just mentioned. And I think, a lot of these third party companies are failing to mention those side effects and everything that's going on. So what can we do? Like really, again, from this wellness lifestyle standpoint, how do you support someone the right way? How do you be there for, maybe a family member, a friend, your parents who are beginning this journey? And, we want to be supportive and help build these, healthy habits. So maybe, they try out the medication and maybe it doesn't work for them. And they're like, I'm just going to go from maybe a different direction. How do we build into these lifestyle habits for them and, for them to be successful, maybe without the medication or if they just stop it altogether?
Yeah, of course. So that is a really good thing that that's an interesting concern you bring up because there are a small percentage of people who do actually stop the medication within year one. So most of this can be due to some of the side effects because there's also side effects like nausea, things of that sort too. So kind of jumping back to what you mentioned about lifestyle change is when we only focus on the medication and not actually changing our habits, we're kind of just putting a band-aid on what the challenge might be. So, as we know, a lot of lifestyle factors can also affect the need of GLP-1s. And a lot of people aren't made aware of that, how to start that exercise routine, what should their diet look like, and getting that support. Also, thinking from the coaching standpoint, a lot of people, once they get the GLP-1s, they're like, okay, I'm set. I don't have to do anything else. I just keep taking this forever. But we don't have any long-term studies to show what are the effects of GLP-1s long-term. Some of these studies might have been done on individuals with metabolic conditions, because that's what GLP-1s were originally for, but
Yeah.
we haven't done that for like the general public yet. So I think one is kind of informing people like, yes, GLP-1s can do this, but they're not a magic pill. Um, they do require some support on your end or on the back end. Because what can also happen is when these people take these GLP-1s and maybe they're like, okay, I don't want to take it for the rest of my life, or I've taken it long enough. If they don't have those lifestyle kind of activities in place, that leads to that yo-yo dieting. So they
Yeah.
get off the GLP-1s, their lifestyle's still the same, they gain the weight back, they're back on the GLP-1s, it drops. So we can see what might have happened. There's a chance. We haven't seen it yet because, as I said, there aren't any long-term studies, but there's a chance we can start to see what we saw in the past with different fad diets.
Absolutely. And I think my immediate thought, just even quickly circling back when you're talking about the side effects of everything, those individuals who maybe are not pre-diabetic or don't really have these pre-existing conditions, and, maybe they are completely healthy and they just want to maybe lose a few pounds or their wedding's coming up and, they go to these third-party companies and they sign up, get the medications, and they don't really know what they're getting into. And it might be just maybe, they lose 10 pounds and they're like, wow. So I think, as we bring this up into the wellness field in this conversation, again, just thinking back and, the whole trans theoretical model, like in that maintenance stage, as these individuals are starting and, maintaining the weight, can we, what can we do for them? And how can we get this health communications out to them and, message, okay, maybe we incorporate some, healthy eating as well. And, some exercise rather than just the medication itself, because, maybe the wedding's over now and then they completely stop. And then, what happens then? Are they just going to consistently go back and experience all these side effects? So it's just, now it comes down to the maintaining. When you think about it from, again, that standpoint, and we're talking about the muscle loss, what does someone need to be doing from, maybe even a movement standpoint to actually really protect themselves, you know?
Yeah, of course. So I'm kind of going back to what I just mentioned, kind of just having that like
Yeah.
establishment of that like
Hmm.
movement and like healthy eating goal from the
Yeah.
beginning. So when it does come to that maintenance, one, I do kind of going back to what you mentioned too. I think a part of the counseling for a different patient who's looking for this should be kind of looking at, okay, what are your current habits? Like, what do you do? And kind of taking that more coaching viewpoint, as you
Yeah.
mentioned. And then I think this is also an interesting place where, like, even workplaces or community groups can start to come in. Now, there aren't any specific GLP-1 support programs out there. Now, there's just the drugs or the medication, sorry. So, with that, this can be a great space for HR leaders to maybe introduce something like Wellness360 or a wellness platform for their users. So now they have access to that information. But to be honest, when it comes to maintenance and health and wellness, it's not the information all the time that people need. It's
Yeah.
that push to help them get to where it
Hmm.
is. So I think the first stage of maintenance is people kind of determining, okay, where is it that you want to start? Is it running 3 times a week, which I never recommend if you're getting started. But if you're in maintenance and you're kind of like, okay, it's time for me to like figure out what life looks like off of GLP-1s, getting that exercise routine going, definitely something that has like strength training. Because you're losing those lean muscles, you got to build your muscle mass back up. So you have to make sure you're doing some type of strength training. And then just to keep up with like burning calories would be cardio, but make sure you don't do too much because your caloric intake is already lowered on GLP-1s. I would say more so focus on strength training. Then when it comes to like food and nutritional intake, make sure you're getting more whole foods in. So we're thinking about foods that actually look like the foods that they are. So vegetables that look like the vegetables, fruits that look like the fruit that they are. The more that the food is removed from looking like what it was, the more processed it is. So we want to focus on that more too. And then when we're thinking about like a lot of our workplace well-being leaders, we want to look at building programs and building a culture into your company around wellness. So encouraging people to maybe go for a walk ever so often,
Yeah.
or as I mentioned, offering a resource like a wellness platform like ours or a wellness committee. Those regular challenges, having those healthier options in the cafeteria or having healthy lunches sponsored by the company. So there's so many ways you can start to support your users who are going through this. But once again, the whole mindset is GLP-1s are a magic pill. So we're
Yes.
not thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I really loved and I really resonated with what you said about, the HR leaders being proactive and taking action, especially because I feel like now, again, the 1 in 8 Americans, someone, if it's a family member, a friend, a colleague that is, on one of these medications. And I think, as in the wellness industry and these HR individuals taking action to build into these wellness programs within the workplace environment, even health coaching is a really great example. I know our platform offers health coaching. Again, just logging on to the Wellness360 platform, a really great way to, again, speak to a health coach and someone in that field to help build in action steps throughout maybe your week, your day, and build a plan that is like best for you instead of just maybe an overall plan. I know there's so many useful things on our platform that I love to recommend to, individuals who are starting their journey. I think, one question I guess I do have for you, Zikea, what would you tell a friend who really is maybe starting their journey, who hasn't been given any of this context? Like, where do you even begin?
Oh, okay. So I would like to circle back to that question in just a moment. But I
Yeah.
do want to go back to something both of us just mentioned when it comes to HR leaders. Just to add another point is that another reason why it's important for HR leaders to get involved is these deficiencies and this loss of muscle mass can lead to things in the future, which can lead to different claims, which will then affect health insurance benefits. So you always want to
Mhm.
remember preventative over everything, which is why it's helpful to kind of learn about this. But
Yeah.
some advice I would give a friend, I actually do have a few friends who are on GLP-1s, and I remember our conversation before they got started. And my first question to them was always like, why do you want to get started on this? Is it like I hate to say it like this, but is it a cosmetic reason? Is it health wise? Like, because once people understand their why, you can kind of move from
Yeah.
there. So I would kind of get that insight from my friends. And then it's like, hey, I understand things are going to happen. You're going to love the weight loss. You're going to look good. It's going to be kind of that place you've wanted to see yourself. But remember, this isn't a cure-all. So while this, and I like to remind them too, this is a new thing for the
Yeah.
public. So you want to make sure you're building the habits to go with it too. So with one of my close friends, I make sure we go for walks or we go work out together just to make sure she's still getting that kind of start for those lifestyle measures. So that's always my first thing is like, hey, know that yes, this is going to give you the results you want, but don't just take this route because you don't want to like eat healthy or work out, because that's still going to be important to like maintaining these benefits. And after a little while, they start to realize that because, of course, the effects happen and you can visibly see it. And they're like, okay, yeah, maybe I should have started going to the gym months ago. And maybe I should have done this. So yeah, that's typically where I start from. It's like, hey, just know you still got to do the work. It's not going to take away from that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful, Zykean. That's wonderful advice to give to a friend against beginning and starting their journey. I think that's wonderful to have someone like you in their lives. Again, thank you for sharing.
Of course.
I think today's conversation was really wonderful and insightful. Really exploring the what the drug market again has explored themselves and the clinical and wellness infrastructure to support it and keep up with it. That's not a knock on medication. It's a question about the system around it. And honestly, the wellness side might be where people can start filling in those gaps themselves. And I definitely think Wellness 360 would be a great place for, HR leaders to again explore for their employees to, start to fill in these gaps and help build these life lasting changes and improve their quality of life. One thing that also really resonated with me that I always just think about a lot is you're like, don't start with running. And I always love to give that advice to people. When you're beginning your exercise and you maybe a journey, don't start out with something that you hate. Find
Yes.
something that you love. I know you like to do yoga. I like to do yoga. And I just think about that. And, start off with those small little steps. And then maybe one day you can build up to enjoying running. For me, myself, I don't think that will be
Same.
possible. But I do think that is, wonderful advice. And I love to, preach that to those around me. So thank you.
My pleasure. And yeah, just like you said, this wasn't a condemnation against GLP-1s. Honestly, you have to do what you have to do for you. But I would like to close off by saying, a lot of the times we tend to look for something to kind of be the shortcut from putting in the work. And I think a lot of people are turning to GLP-1s for that, as I've mentioned. But I think a kind of universal message is that like whether it's medication for specific conditions or not, us making sure we put in effort to take care of our bodies on top of those things is always going to be utmost important. Yeah, nothing is going to be a cure-all. It takes our work in it as well. But with that, we'd love to thank you all for tuning in. And
Yes.
yes, so stay tuned in for our next episode of Road to Wellbeing. And with that, we're signing out. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.